Alright y'all, so it's next day, and to be completely honest, I stayed up till 5 a.m. trying to do this, and I tapped out. We got the front timing cover back on, all siliconed up. We torqued down everything after we let the silicone sit. Same thing with the oil pan. We re-siliconed the oil pan. Now is the stressful part, just making sure that I have all the nuts and bolts that I need to put everything back together. That's kind of where I'm struggling at the moment. There's like literally one bolt that I'm missing from being like 100%. And I have no idea where it is, so we're gonna end up looking for that. I just got some packages from Enjuku that I'm about to open up. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be for anything else other than the Q50. Honestly, the Z's and the 240s is mostly what gets the love from Enjuku. The Q50 really gets love from Z1. And speaking of Z1, shout out to them. They finally got the LSD that I sent out to them a couple of weeks ago. They're finally being able to open it up, check out the differential, check out the planetary gears, and hopefully we can figure out some way to resurrect the LSD back in the Q50. So shout out to everyone at Z1 Motorsports. I'll put their link in their website down in the description below. If you guys are looking for any Nissan aftermarket or OEM parts, make sure to go ahead and check out Z1 Motorsports. Alright, so I thought this would be a perfect opportunity, being the fact that the Supercharger is actually out the car at the moment. This is most likely a side of the Supercharger that you guys don't really get to see too often. This is the oil drain line, this is the Stillen bottom mount tensioner, this is the pulley on the rear of the blower, and then this is the actual jack shaft pulley that connects to the front serpentine belts. The only thing that's missing here is my anti-slip pulley, which you guys see is currently the rest of it is inside the actual bracket. We've been having the anti-slip pulley having this issue to where it would just completely break off. We got the brand new one right here. This one's completely reinforced, and this should bear the load of 16 pounds of boost, which is our target goal for this specific Supercharger blower. But I want to get rid of this bottom mount tensioner bracket because I feel like it adds a lot of unnecessary tension in the opposite direction. I want to have a free-flowing belt on the bottom here, and then I want the tension just to come from the top. So that's what we're going to do today with this. We're going to set the tension from the top of the belt with the anti-slip kit and just completely delete this Stillen tensioner bracket. I got the okay from Zen. I'll put his link down in the description below. He's the one who built me this. He gave me the okay to delete this a while ago, and I keep on confirming with him if it's okay, and he said everything so far with all applications that he sent out, everyone's deleting this part of the pulley configuration. Supercharger pulley. There's a little pin, like a dial pin, acts as like a guide for the Supercharger pulley. Do not lose that. I don't know where the hell else you're gonna find this little pin, and I don't know how expensive it is, but I guarantee it's taxed for a little piece of metal. So right before we get into this, something I found out today, and that's a really good piece of advice. This is a Gates K080220 RPM belt. Now, there's two different kinds of belts that you could actually get with this Supercharger. There's the RPM style Gates belts, and then there's just the regular micro VAT Gates Supercharger belts. Now, the difference between the two belts is a lot of people think RPM stands for high RPM, and that's literally wrong. That's not at all what it stands for. What RPM actually stands for is Racing Performance Muscle. The ribs on the belt actually grip better on the pulley, but they actually eat away the pulley as well. And these are a little bit more stretchable, and the length is actually a little bit longer. So you'll find yourself actually tightening this belt a little bit more than you would with the regular micro V belt. And these belts are a little bit more fragile. These tend to crack and break and bend a lot easier. I've noticed actually a lot of belt residue on my Supercharger pulleys because the material on this belt is not as good as the stiffer material on the micro VAT. These are really prone to snap under hypertension, which is probably what I was doing, tightening this belt so much to the point to where it was basically stretching under load, and then honestly it's either the belt that's going to give out or the pulley on top, and because the pulley really had no resistance going down, the pulley just kind of popped off. So We're gonna run this belt right now just so that way we can turn the car on. Like I said, I've put over like 3,000 miles on this belt and it hasn't broken yet, but we're just not gonna dog on it. And then once we get our new regular micro VAT from Gates, then we'll go ahead and swap this belt out, since it'll be pretty easy of a process now that we deleted the old Stillen bottom mount bracket. Show you guys what our issue was before. Basically, our top mount pulley was really far off from where our belt edge was. We basically need the edge of this idler to be exactly resting on the edge of this belt like this. Now, how we had it before was more kind of like this, to where the edge of the pulley was just resting on the belt itself, and I really felt like the edge of the idler would just cut in to the belt material. On top of that, this little reinforcement bracket right here has a little curve on the bottom, and when I would tighten and adjust the belt, you would actually see that this part of the bracket would start touching and rubbing on the belt, which the moment I turned the car on, it would just rip this belt apart and just eat it up. So I did some measurements yesterday and I ended up getting some 4mm washers. Now that actually spaces out the bracket from the actual supercharger blower perfectly to where I can get the edge of the belt and the edge of the pulley to line up. 4 washers is just fine. There's enough surface contact to the actual blower for me to not worry about this thing moving around much. Alright, now we gotta thread this in. I highly don't recommend using an impact on the back of this pulley, but I understand when times get tough, you gotta do what you gotta do. I wonder if my electric ratchet has enough torque. Seems like it does. Alright, this is the fun part. Hold on, let me make sure I'm not missing nothing. I got the set screw in there, got the locking screw. We're good. Like I said, we're just gonna be running the RPM belt for the time being, and then later, once we get our micro VAT belt in the mail, then we'll go ahead and we'll swap it out. A lot of people have different methods to getting this belt on. I just make sure I get one side over the jackshaft pulley and one side over the supercharger pulley, and then I'll just kind of twist back and forth just to make sure I can get the ribs on. We'll go ahead and work the other one. So you see how we actually have a lot of slack, and that's my issue with this specific RPM belt, is they stretch and they're flimsy and I don't like them. I want a tight, firm belt that doesn't bend or bow or nothing. So this is the front side of the blower where the serpentine belt is. Now what we're gonna do here is we're actually gonna want to unlock this locking screw. This tiny little pin right here is actually an Allen key, and what this does is this actually pushes against this bolt right here, so that way there's no flex or play, or if it just decides to come out the thread one day, this little locking pin right here will actually stop that from happening. Now what actually allows you to put the bracket up and down is not this set screw, but is this little locking screw right here. This squeezes both the adjustable bracket and the actual bracket that mounts to the supercharger, squeezes them together so that way it can't move. Once you set the tension you want, you go ahead and tighten your locking screw and make sure your set screw's in the position that you want it in, and boom, there you go. To unlock it, if we want to adjust the belt tension, we just take an Allen key, go ahead and unlock that little locking screw, and now, as you see, we can push up and down on our belt. One of my favorite parts about this, if you guys look really close in there, there's actually little measurement marks that you can mark with a marker or just keep track of on a notepad or whatever you want, and you'll actually be able to see which tension gives you which kind of horsepower and RPM that you want out of this supercharger blower. It's kind of like a dumbfounded method of a boost controller, but on a supercharger. So you guys know a supercharger's boost is created by the amount of tension that's on the belt and how fast it spins and the amount of RPM that the supercharger's running at. This allows you to tighten the belt with precise measurements that you could keep track of. Essentially, this is like a really standard version of a boost controller for a supercharger. So that's really cool. That's something to keep in mind for you guys. And once we got the exact tension we want, then we'll go ahead and check our mark, which is literally just about 2 3/4. And then I'll take something like a magic marker to be able to make a mark, just to make sure I don't lose my position from my set screw.